This is the new Haworth Zody. It's also been called the Haworth Zody 2. However, on Haworth's website, they're calling this new Zody just Zody, and the Zody 1, the older Zody, they're now calling the classic Zody. Now, this newer Zody here, man, I said Zody so many times. This newer Zody here is hands down the best chair for standing desks. But to get there, they did have to make a few compromises. Let's get honest. Starting from the bottom and working our way up, the casters are soft casters, meaning they're gonna work well on carpet and hardwood floors. The legs on this have a decent amount of flatness, so if you're someone who likes to sit in the chair and raise their feet up, there is a good amount of width on here, and it's flat enough that your feet aren't just gonna be slipping off the sides. Now, in terms of material, 3 of these chairs, or at least 3 of the quicker ship models, they're going to be metal. This is the only one, this is the fog color. This is the only one that comes with the polished aluminum. However, there are gonna be 2 models that come with plastic bases. I think it's in the black and then like the grayish whitish one. And those both start at sub $900, whereas the metal ones start at about a little over $1,000. The controls under the chair are plentiful and quite confusing. I was really confused because I was reading one thing on the website, but I didn't know exactly how to control it. So hopefully this breakdown will help you guys out. Okay, so let's start with the simplest. On the left side here is gonna be a single tab, and this is gonna allow you to control the seat depth. And the seat depth, you get plenty of a seat depth adjustment. So if you have extremely long legs, you're gonna be able to get more support for your legs. General principle is that you're supposed to be able to fit 2 fingers between the crook of your knee and the front edge of the chair, and that's supposed to be like the ideal position. On the right side is where things get a little confusing. So we're gonna start with the base chair. So every single chair are gonna have these features. The first is gonna be this tab, is gonna be your height adjustment. I really love that they put it right here because I have short arms, and if you're like me, you don't have to like go all the way down here to lift up your height, because the whole point of height adjustment is to align yourself with your monitor, right, in your PC. So then you wanna have your eyes at the top of the monitor. Well, if it's down here every single time, it's always guesswork. But because it's so close, I can keep my torso pretty much the level that I would have it when I use a computer and just be able to make fine-tuned adjustments just like that. So love it having it here. Now, the knob and the back tab, those are gonna come on a base model chair. The one in the front is the perch mode, which isn't an optional upgrade. But let's start with this rolly thing here, or this knob here. That's gonna be the obvious one. It controls how easy or difficult it is to tilt back in your chair. What I love about these higher end chairs is that it only takes about 10 turns for you to get from totally stiff to totally back. Very, very easy to do, really nicely adjustable. Now, this back tab here, this is gonna control your backstop, but this is pretty confusing, okay? So when you're all the way up, it's going to be totally unlocked, and you do get a ton of lean back in this chair, a ton of, like you get a huge degree in which you can lean back in this chair. I just wish that they would have a headrest or something so that you can take advantage of being able to lean back this far. Unfortunately, I don't see a chair or an option anytime soon with a headrest. Okay, now, the confusing part becomes that when you push this tab down, it locks the chair in place. But on their website, it clearly states that there are multiple levels of lock, but you're kind of like, how? Well, instead of doing the guesswork like I did, the way you do it is that you lean back to a position that you'd want to be able to get to, or you want to lock it at. So let's say I want to lock it back here. Then you push this all the way down, and when you now lean back, it's going to stop you in about that position. It's not the most intuitive thing. Coming to this front tab here, this is your perch mode, and this is what makes this chair an excellent chair for standing desks. And I'm gonna kind of try to demonstrate this here for you. My desk area is really, really messy. I'll do some B-roll over there, but please forgive me for that. But this perch mode, what it does, and this is a little confusing, when I activate this perch mode here, you have to tilt it forward, and when you lean back in the chair, you're gonna hear something kind of unlock. And then when you go forward, you're gonna be able to go forward in your chair. Now, this forward tilt is something that you see in the Haworth Fern and a lot of the Herman Miller chairs. And the reason for this is because when your feet are planted into the ground like this, when your chair tilts forward like this, when your feet are planted, it allows you to have actually better posture when you're sitting in your chair compared to just like standard sitting in a chair, because you can slouch really easily, but when your feet are planted, you're more compelled to keep your back straight. Now, what's unique about this chair, about the Zody compared to the Fern and any other Herman Miller chair, is that not only does the chair tilt forward, but then this seat goes a little forward as well. And that little tilt actually makes all the difference in the world, especially as you go higher up. because here you can see that I have very short legs, but when I'm sitting in the chair, so when I tilt forward, it's like this, but then the chair continues to tilt forward. This means that when I'm standing at my desk like this, and then I go ahead and sit down in this chair, I can still sit at the tip of my chair and still be in a relatively similar position. I can probably actually go a little higher here and take advantage of that. So you can see here, I'm on my standing desk, watch my hand level, and then I go down into the chair, and I'm still able to sit and stand at the exact same level. And this is what makes this chair an excellent hybrid for standing desks. But this little tilt forward feature comes with some compromises. Primarily this, okay? And by the way, if you wanna relock this, you have to lift that tab back, then lean all the way back in the chair, hear that click, and then you'll be at center station again, or you'll be level again. But the reason why I say it comes with compromises is because you know that extra seat forward tilt at the end that makes all the difference? Well, that's happens in the chair whether you have that unlocked or not. Watch this, watch the amount of play there is in this chair. Oh, hold on, let me lock the back so you guys can see it. So all chairs have a little bit of play in the back, every single chair, even the highest end chairs. I hear complaints about this all the time. It's just the nature of chairs. I don't know exactly why. Here is me at normal, and then you can actually feel a forward bump. So there's actually a good amount of play on the forward and back of this chair, and it has to do with the fact that this chair can tilt forward. And I know not a lot of people are gonna love that. I will say that when you're sitting in your chair primarily, you're not really tilting forward, so you may not feel it as much and it may not bother you as much, but just wanted to give you guys a heads up. The seat on the Zody is pretty wide and it's got a good amount of depth. It's soft on all sides, making it good for people who like to be ergonomic rebels and kind of sit in their chair leg over leg or leg tucked under leg, so there's no hard parts there. However, I will say that this cushion in this chair is probably a medium firmness. Now, it's not medium firm as in like you're hitting a brick wall. It's more like a memory foam that's really, really dense. That's what it feels like. When you sit on this, you're gonna be kind of sitting on top of it, but there is give. It's just gonna take a little while for that give to kind of sink in. Now, this is a complaint that I don't think I've ever made about any other chair, especially a high-end chair, but the stitching on this chair looks awful. Like, man, the stitching here, I don't know, it just doesn't look super duper appealing. The colors on these new Zodys are insane. They look great, but unfortunately the stitching isn't great. The fabric material is quite scratchy. This is the highest end one on their pre-built ones. This is a $1,400 chair, and I was expecting better, but this fabric is quite scratchy. One thing I noticed is that because the seat is so dense, when you go to sit in it and then adjust the seat depth out, you actually feel the gap significantly on your butt. I think it's got something to do with the fact that if it was a much plushier cushion, you'd be lower in the chair and then your butt would be hitting kind of the more curved part of the back, so you don't feel it as much. But on this, because you're sitting on top of it, you do feel a gap. And so if you are someone who's, I'm gonna say 5'11" with particularly long legs, this may be one that you just want to avoid altogether. The arms on this chair are great. They have a good amount of cushion. It's not super duper plush, but it feels really supportive. And then one of the best things that I love about these arms is that they don't have a ton of give at the top. They do rattle just a tiny bit. But one of the things I love about it is it's not that easy to just hit and kind of move around. This happens on the Fern, this happens on all the steel case chairs. These arms are gonna stay in place the way you have them so that if you come and you accidentally hit it, it's not going to change positions on you, which apparently is a complaint that a lot of you guys have about those chairs. So with this one, it takes quite a bit of force to move it front and back, in and out, and then it swivels. And this swivel especially is one that's quite difficult to do. Now, it can feel like it's gonna break, but trust me, it's not. And if it does, you've got a 12-year warranty, and that's part of the reason why you buy an expensive chair like this. This is the mesh back Zody, and this thing feels freaking super comfortable, but it has two big flaws. All right, so what I like about it is that when you sit in the chair and you're just sitting, man, the flexing of the back and the mesh is like at the perfect tension and bounciness that it just, oh man, it feels really good on your back. But there are two flaws. One is that compared to every other high-end ergonomic chair that I've tested, this one must have the worst range of motion I've ever tested. So watch what happens. I'm gonna move my arms back, and here I can barely, so my chest open would be like here. This would be having my chest open. But when I sit back in the chair, you can see that actually my shoulders are being pushed forward because I'm just not my arms are crashing into the frame. And if you're wearing short sleeves here, yes, this is scratchy back here. So that is a big loss for the Zody, especially if you like having your chest wide open while sitting in your chair. The second flaw of the Zody's back is that I know that people have written in the comments that they get mad when a chair doesn't allow them to sit in like a perfect 90 degrees. So like this is me sitting perfectly straight, like my back and everything is just perfectly straight. I don't like this position, but it's too much tension in my shoulders. But watch what happens. This is me perfectly 90. Look how far, and this chair is locked right now, so everything is locked. Watch how far the default position is in this chair. That's how much further I can go back in the default position. And for some people, I know that's gonna be a deal breaker. I'll do it one more time just so you can see. It's perfectly 90. That is a huge distance from perfectly upright. Now, for me personally, whenever I sit in a chair, I do like to relax it so that I sit in a more natural position so that I'm not putting tension on my shoulders when I sit. So for me, this works, but I know that doesn't work for all of you, so just wanna give you guys a heads up on that. The one kind of fix that you can have, especially for people with taller torsos, because I've noticed that if you have a taller torso, what's gonna happen is not only will you go back in the chair, but then your shoulders, because your back is taller, or your back will just kind of lean back. And at this point, if you're sitting like this in the chair, look at my arms, man. This is mad uncomfortable. Who types like this? Like your arms are kind of forcing their way out here. So one kind of fix that you can make is by getting the optional upgradable lumbar, and you can raise it all the way up. And by doing that, now what happens is when I sit in the chair, that lumbar prevents my shoulders from slouching back too. So now not only am I back in the chair, but then that actually pushes my like the top part a little bit forward, or it supports it a little bit more forward, so that now my arms aren't shooting out from back here, but now I'm kind of sitting in a more natural position. So that's one of the positions you can have for your lumbar. The downside is that maybe you want your lumbar lower, right? Maybe you want it lower on your back. Maybe you don't want it all the way up there. So if that's the case, yeah, it gets a little tricky there. Now, when we talk about the lumbar support, this thing is a giant piece of plastic. Now, I will say to Haworth's credit, when I was wearing a t-shirt, because I tested this for quite some time, when I was wearing a t-shirt, this thing didn't dig into my back, so it is a piece of plastic, but it's not something that's gonna be stabbing you, unlike some other cheaper plastic lumbar supports that we've seen. But this, you can't feel it, and what you can do is you can adjust it up and down. And then you've got this tab here, and if you roll it up towards your back, it's gonna give you a little extra oomph. It's not crazy, it's just a little extra. And again, when I'm wearing a thick sweater like this, I barely feel it, but when I was wearing a t-shirt, I could feel that extra oomph. Now, one of the cool things about this is that let's say you decide you want more support on your right side versus your left side. Well, these handles act individually. Now, they can't act individually in up and down, but they can act individually in how much oomph they give you. So for example, with this right one, I'm gonna go ahead and make it give me more oomph. But on the left one, I'm gonna keep it down here so it's not as much, and then I can also do it the other way around so that only my left side is getting that extra oomph. I don't know exactly when you'd use this. I'd love to know down in the comments below if that's something that you would use. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Until next time, stay honest.